No part of this recording may be used to train so-called generative AI models. Welcome to another episode of Fandom X Archive podcast. I'm your host, Dinara Tengri, aka Alien Super Soldier. And as promised, we have something very different for you this month. The most epic crossover collaboration since the Springfield Files. I have with me the producer and host of the Hey Danny, It's Mulder podcast, and my good friend, Shaun O'Boyle. As a big fan of his podcast and his X-Files color scheme page on Instagram, I am very excited to finally have Shaun on my show. So, Shaun, why don't you start by introducing yourself to our audience and just giving us your life story in
I,
your own words?
I love how there's no pressure that you've set it up with the Springfield Files, which was truly the most epic crossover.
It's
It's so nice to meet you and to speak with you. I'm such a fan of all that you do in the
Thank
fandom.
you, and the feeling is mutual.
So my life story, it will be short if I'm only focusing on the most interesting things. So I'm from Ireland. I'm from a small coastal town, and I left that town to become a scientist. So I studied and trained as a scientist, and now I sort of work in a lot of science adjacent fields. I work in the museum sector and in science communication, and also in podcasting and radio. So this is how I came to do a podcast, also so that I could meet other cool X-Files people.
So you're more of a Scully than Mulder.
That so I've my whole life this is the question that I've been trying to answer, because Mulder is the character, like Mulder's my hero, and he's the character that I want to identify with the most. I love that he's an outsider. I love that, and I think, growing up in a small town experiencing bullying, I was like, Mulder, people laugh at Mulder, but he's still the coolest guy on this
Right.
show. But then I became a scientist, and at work maybe I'm more Scully, and then at home I'm more Mulder. I'm not as cool as either of them. Who am I kidding?
I mean, who is really? That's
I
that's
mean,
that's kind of the paradox of Mulder is that he is a huge he's described as a loser, a huge nerd, just sitting in his basement. Nobody takes him seriously, but is it, I don't know, it's because David Duchovny just portrays him in that way, or is it because he as a character doesn't care about what other people think about him, but he is so cool.
yeah.
Uh, it
That's where his
just,
power comes from, I think, not caring. And
right.
sometimes I think there have been moments where you see it get to him, but for the most part, I think that's for me where his power is, that he doesn't care. I almost swore. Can I swear on your podcast?
Uh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but you can because I mean this is going to be on YouTube, but I'm not monetizing my content. So yeah, you can swear.
You can't ask an Irish person to not swear. It's a very difficult thing.
I mean, you should hear me speak Russian. It's
I would love
just
that.
that's just like one, it's just like you have to bleep out every third word when I'm speaking Russian. So it's a bleeping dead alien if I ever bleep in so one.
Do you ever watch the X-Files in like dubbed in Russian?
Yes. Back in Kazakhstan, when we were getting Russian channels, we watched it in Russian dubbing. And I have to say the dubbing was very good. I remember the characters' voice actors' voices were so pleasant. Uh, so it wasn't so jarring. And when we started watching in English, it wasn't such a big adjustment. So yeah, the first X-Files I watched was in Russian.
Nice. I'm fascinated by the sort of how the local voices in the different languages for all of the characters and how they became sort of celebrities in their own languages is quite nice.
It is. Of course, here in Sweden, we have subtitles, and I wouldn't change that for the world.
Yeah.
Just hearing the original actors, their original voices, nothing beats that for me.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me if I watch something in a language that I don't understand. I much prefer to hear their delivery, even if I
Mhm.
don't know what they're saying, and to read subtitles.
So the big question is, how and when did you become a fan of the X-Files?
I became a fan. So X-Files came out here in, I think it was 93. It came out in 92 in the US, isn't that right?
93.
Initially. It was 93. So it was the following year that it came out. Yeah. So 94, I
Mhm.
first caught it. And I was literally looking through channels, all like what, four or six of them that we had here. And I passed BBC Two, which is a UK channel, and it was the episode Shadows. And I remember it so clearly because it was the scene where the bath was filling up with blood, and I was like, "What is this? I need to, I need to watch this." And I looked it up in back in the old days when we had to go and find the TV guide, and I looked up what it was, and I watched it. I don't think I missed an episode really after that because I was instantly hooked. It just ticked all of the boxes that I was interested in. I was already a horror and science fiction fan, and yeah, I loved the atmosphere, the look, the vibe, everything.
Shadows is a good introduction for a new fan. It's not like it's not their strongest episode, certainly not the strongest in the first season, but that scene that you talked about with the bathtub filling up, that is a genuinely scary scene.
Yeah.
Like even today, like maybe the rest of the episode can be a little like goofier, with the tables shaking and everything, but that scene and with the voice behind the camera like screaming, it's just it's so unsettling. I love
When I
that.
think when I think about it, it had so many things that were characteristic of an X-Files episode.
Mm.
You had Mulder seeing the everything flying around before Scully got there. So it was
Right.
like, and they were analyzing footage. There was, forensics. There was it sort of ticked a lot of those boxes. But then it was maybe a year or two before I saw the episodes that preceded that.
Mm.
So it was a long time before I saw the pilot because we didn't have any easy way at that time to find those episodes.
No.
I sound so
I
old.
It was such a long time. I mean, I can talk about, kids today not knowing the hardships and the joys of what, having a favorite show and not having access to all of it and having to wait a whole week or a whole summer or, not having the VHS tapes or the DVDs to watch it. So it's there is something. I don't know. I don't want to say special, but it just feels like there is something. It's something that unites, those OG, us
Yeah.
old fans, us old people.
I'm grateful for those. I think because there were so many material aspects of it. It was ordering magazines, it was like
Mm.
you say the VHS tapes. It was very, things that you had to find and get and own and work for. And I think that, and then it primed us then when we did get access to the internet and when Web 1.0 was developing, that we were sort of primed to use the internet as a tool for our fandom.
Right.
Well, for me, first and foremost.
I remember when I was a little girl, we had this street market called the Bazaar, and you could find anything there, like from produce to like technology, boom boxes, everything. And so my mom and I would go to that market and there would be like stands and there would be like these bootleg, first of all, bootleg VHS tapes of like any movie
Yeah.
you can think of. And second, these completely unauthorized, unlicensed notebooks. Feature, the covers were like from popular pop, from the current pop culture movies and TV shows. And I remember vividly, there was some notebooks with Titanic. So you would have like Leo and Kate on the cover, and the other one was the X-Files, and you would have course,
Yeah.
David and Jillian. And I remember I wanted to ask my mom, can you please buy this one for me? But I just, like I said, I didn't have the guts to ask for one, but it was just it was the X-Files was so prevalent that, you could even find the X-Files in the street market.
Yeah. I think I remember going into some shops that sold like posters, probably smoking supplies. But I remember they would have these walls of badges or pins in the US where you would have these little buttons with different, just it might just say trust no one, but
Mhm.
that was the bootleg merch that I think I first got. So I still have those somewhere. And then, of course, so where I grew up, we didn't, like, I'm quite far from a city. The town that I'm from is, the population is about 1,000, so it's quite small. But I mean, it's big by our standards, but by I think other European standards, it's quite small. But we had one news agent, and they didn't stock the X Files magazine until I went down and asked them if they would order it in for me. So then every month, I think that was a monthly, that was on the shelves, and I had my copy stored behind the counter, so I would go down and collect that. And I think that's why, for me, I like that. I love the show and I love the movies, one of them more than the other. But I think having all of those things like the magazines, and when I was eventually able to buy some of the books and the VHS tapes, whatever, the few that I could afford, I'm just really, I love that experience of the fandom, those memories, and still doing it.
It almost feels like not as separate, but it feels like an interest in itself, like a hobby in itself. Like, you watch the show, you like the show, but then like the way what you're describing, like collecting, uh, memorabilia, it almost it's almost its own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, there are people who speak really beautifully about this and write really beautifully about this. I'm thinking of Bethan Jones and Darren Mooney and a few other people who talk about the X-Files as this transmedia story,
Mm.
and also just the way that, describing X-Files as a fandom and what we have in common with other fandoms, but also what makes us a little different. And I think that it was Bethan who said that a lot of these things are different ways to engage with the text. There's this show that we love, and these are just other ways in to experience it and to engage with it ourselves. And I really like that. I'm fascinated by how all of those things contribute to your experience of a show.
I agree. I agree. And one thing that I mean, it's something that I have confirmed for myself while doing this podcast is because, I'm researching all these like old chat rooms and old forums and like the culture, the fan wars inside of the fandom, like shippers, no romos, slashers, and, all the other ship wars. And so and seeing and also interviewing different people, different fans, and hearing their stories about how they got into the show, because it seems like I don't know if it's true, but it seems like the internet as it is today is making everything a little more homogenous. So whatever whatever is the most popular thing, that's the only, it ends up being the only thing we talk about. So like most fans only talk about MSR, and that's like the only thing that they're interested in. But when you talk to other fans, outside of the internet, like in real life, and you get to hear their stories about how they got into the show and what drew them to that show, and there you just get so many different stories and so many different angles. I talked to this my friend Dylan. His journey into the world of the X-Files is completely different than anything I've ever heard before. So, um, but I guess that's testament to how great the show is.
And also, I think for me, the X-Files came at a time when I really needed, like, I grew up gay kid, bullied, finding it difficult to navigate the world in small town Ireland. And like this show came along, and like we said, this protagonist that, could be a hero and also be ridiculed by so many other people in this in his life, in his workplace. And it was just I think that part of it pulled me in as well. And I think even though my initial engagement with the fandom wasn't on, pre-internet, you were still reading, I actually did, I learned about zines later through people like you, through you, and a lot of fanfic through you and following you. But I did, have some access to magazines. You would have the letters to a magazine, or you would have it. It wasn't as instant as it is now, but you still had a sense that there were other people out there who liked the same thing that you liked, who maybe had a similar story to you, maybe not, but you maybe felt like you could identify with these characters, with this universe. And so it was it was just a nice thing to know that there were other people out there. And then when the internet came along, like you say, you could, because it was so forum led, or I mean, chat room led, definitely as episodes came out, but because everything was so forum led, you found the things that interested you. So if you were really into the music in an episode or in the series, or some of the, like, I really loved Pendrell, and I loved some of these characters that you only saw for a few episodes. So you could really bond with people who were like equally hyper focused on this one little niche thing. But yeah, it's a good point, as you say. Now it's about the prevailing conversation or theme.
Interesting that you say that you were a gay kid and, feeling like an outsider, being bullied, and you saw in Mulder, like you saw yourself in Mulder, and you instantly, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm interpreting it wrong, but you felt that you could relate to Mulder. And that, I think it's kind of fascinating that a character like Mulder could have, stir that kind of reaction in a queer kid.
Mhm.
This character is his sexuality is not stated explicitly in the show. It's just like, oh, he likes porn. He flirts
He
with
loved
women.
porn.
He falls in love with Scully. Like these are all like very heteronormative
Yeah.
things, but the way that again, I don't know if it's because the way David plays him, or it's just something that we queer people can see in the portrayal. But just, well, maybe just the fact that he is this outsider and this underdog, that a queer kid could see
Hmm.
themselves in this character. And I think it's great. I think it's fascinating.
And it's, yeah, like you say, there were no, I mean, later, somewhat, there were queer characters, often problematic, but I think I always felt, even as a young person watching it, these characters wouldn't make fun of me. Some of them probably would, but like, I feel like the lone gunmen, they're not people who would make fun of me. Mulder is not someone who would make fun of me. Scully is not someone who would make fun of me. And I think that that's not something that I got from other universes necessarily. Like even other shows that I loved, like Buffy, like Cordelia definitely making fun of me, but
Early
Langley is
early
not.
Buffy Cordelia, absolutely.
And I would thank her, you know. If Cordelia Chase made fun of me, I would love that. But I think that with the X-Files, because it was such a, it was dealing with very grown up, serious, themes. And it was a grown up world where I knew these characters are all cool. Like they'll all be cool if I meet them. So it was less, I don't think I identified so much with Mulder as I just really liked him, and I
Yeah.
thought that this is a cool guy. And the same with Scully, I thought that I just, and even later when I was older, and these other characters were introduced, like Reyes especially is one of my favorite characters in the show. I just I just feel like that's something they did very well. I think they created characters that outsiders could either relate to or feel like safe with. if that's not stretching it too far.
No, I think that makes perfect sense because like the good guys on the show are underdogs and they are outsiders. Like Mulder and Scully, that's their thing. They're in the FBI, but they're outsiders within the system. And lone gunmen are outsiders and underdogs. They're these three vastly different people that were drawn, to each other, uh, almost but like, I don't know, by some cosmic forces, but they were all like different and diverse, but all underdogs in their
Yeah,
own ways. And yeah, I guess that's what makes them so relatable. And like you said, it makes you feel safe, like you could be friends with these characters.
yeah,
And even I would say, like even the main villains, they wouldn't make fun of you. They wouldn't make fun of me. The only characters that I can think would, make fun of someone different are these like small town sheriffs and
yeah.
these really like bigoted, small-minded characters that you meet like like, sporadically in different episodes.
And they were always written that we disapproved of that, you know. Like, yeah, I think even cigarette smoking man, he has bigger things to deal with than,
Exactly.
being
Like
homophobic.
yeah, he's not he doesn't concern himself with like making fun of gay people or
Mhm.
uh, you know writing transphobic tweets. He's just his his concerns lie elsewhere.
I preferred I preferred a time when villains were, I prefer cigarette smoking man villains than the actual villains that we have today.
Yeah, I agree. I think I even had a story on Instagram like I
You
remember like
did.
make what did I write? Make villains have class again or
Yeah.
something like that.
Make them interesting again.
Yeah, yeah. So you have a podcast. It's called Hey Danny, It's Mulder. And the way I understand it's a one-man show. You do everything. You do the research and the writing and the interviewing and the editing. Uh, Now, first of all, let me go on record by saying that how much I appreciate just the concept of this podcast,
Thank you.
because I think that rewatch podcasts as a medium are very important to keeping the fandom alive, keeping the conversation, having the conversation going. But having said that, there's so many rewatch podcasts, and at some point, I just want to have something more than just listening to other fans' opinions, especially if I can't interject or have a conversation with them while I'm listening to the podcast. And so I think that your podcast fills this niche, or at least for me, um, where you go behind the scenes of the show and you talk to people who used to work on the show, to gives this a little like almost like a meta level, and you're talking to people that are keeping this fandom alive, so it becomes more than just what you think about the show, more than just like not that I'm not saying that your subjective experiences about the show are not important, but you make it bigger than just about your own experiences. And I really, really appreciate that. And so for that, I want to say thank you.
Thank you. That's
And
very kind of you to say, and it means a lot coming from you because I am also a massive fan of your podcast and all of the work that you do. And I think for me, I think the only reason I approach all of these things like I don't know anything and I want to learn. So, that's how I think that's how I approach all of these things.
I mean, that's a scientific approach.
I didn't even think of it like that, but yeah. No, it came about because I make part of my work. So I mostly work freelance, and part of my work I work with an artist as a co-producer, and we make podcasts and radio programs, documentaries, things like that. And we've done that for years, and I felt the need to just make something to remind myself why I enjoy audio and podcasts, and I wanted to make something myself, and I mean, I'm saying myself, I get lots of support and advice from Morris, who I work with, and also he's the voice of the scripts. But I wanted to do something that I was interested in, that I could take as my own project, no stress, no pressure. It's not for a client. I'm not getting paid for it. I just wanted to do something that I was that I would want to listen to. And I think I'm interested in different people's jobs and work, and I think anything we can do to, especially now, highlight the value of work and work done by people and not algorithms, I think is important and interesting and meaningful. And then also the X-Files is still my favorite show since whatever 1994, so it just made sense. And I was nervous actually, because I was just like, I don't know, I only re-engaged with the fandom during the online fandom during COVID. During, as though it's a distant memory, but you know what I mean, during those initial couple of years. But so there was a lot for me to learn and to catch up on. But yeah, so I was nervous about making something because there are so many great X-Files podcasts. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, and hopefully I'm doing something interesting for some other people.
Well, you are, and I really like your approach of, going in with the assumption that you don't know anything. I think it's just so much better as in science, in anything. When you want to make something good, uh, the worst thing you can do is go into this thing. I know everything, and I'm just gonna prove that I'm right to everyone, and I'm just gonna stroke my own ego. Going in like almost as a student, and with the goal that you're going to learn something along the
Yeah.
way, and teach other people while you're learning. I think that's the best approach you can have. And like I
I
said,
think
it's a scientific one.
yeah, and I think with science, I think we get so caught up with the information of science and the outputs, and we forget about who does it, why they do it, and how they do it. And I think that it's always really in science, it's important to come back to that. And I think then that just made me interested in that with the X-Files. And like, I mean, I've been consuming, the X-Files since I was, I think, like 12 years old or something ridiculous. So I've read interviews, I've watched interviews, I've listened to commentaries, but I wanted, there were so many other jobs that I wanted to learn about. And I think that's why that's why I called it Hey Danny, It's Mulder, because I'm fascinated by the character of Danny. We never get to see him. He plays a critical role in the show. I always think that like if they were to do a spin-off about Danny, I will be invested. And I would watch the hell out of that. But I also like that he was this sort of person we never got to see, and I think that I'm interested in speaking with the people that aren't on the Blu-ray special features, or haven't done sort of feature interviews in the magazines over the years. So that's what I hope to do with it. And I mean, also I like it's a dream. I got to chat like for the first episode. I spoke with Katrina McCarthy, who was the costume designer on season 11 and also worked as a costumer on Fight the Future, and I think from maybe season 5. So like I was just there like listening to her tell stories about working on the show, and every, a detail to her that she just included in a story is like, to me, just so valuable, because I'm like, I didn't realize that you were the person who chose that. So I have to try and ground myself before every interview, no matter who I'm speaking to, because I'm here. And yeah, even people like who didn't work directly in the show but worked around it in some capacity. I find it all fascinating. I'm a nerd.
I
We're all
mean,
nerds.
that's why we're all here, because we're all
Yeah,
nerds.
it's true.
Um, I love that you show so much appreciation and that you focus so much on people that, that are not the stars of the show, that, all the people that are working behind the camera. I remember, now I'm gonna get a little angry here, but uh, I left Twitter. But back when I was on Twitter, I wrote something about the X-Files, being this amazing show that was dealing with, like, politics and uh, doing the social commentary. And I asked this like hypothetical question: is this why this show is still so relevant? It still holds up? And then some, I'm not gonna call names, but some fan wrote, "No, it's only because of David and Jillian. It's only because of them." And I got so angry, and I quote tweeted that, and I wrote something like I was very well, angry tweeting, but the point was, how can you not acknowledge and appreciate all the people that made the show possible that were not the stars? Like, I am not diminishing David and Jillian's, their role in making the X-Files what it is, but to say that it's just because of these two actors is like doing such a disservice to all of the people that put in so many hours of their lives into making the show possible and making it the best it could be. And like, if you as a fan do not appreciate or recognize that, you need to take a step back and I don't know, get a reality check. Like I said, I was gonna get angry at this point, and
I
I
support
did.
that. And I get it. I see where you're coming from, and I agree. I think that, I mean, I'm not somebody who, when I, as a fan, I focus on the characters rather than the performers. And I really appreciate the work of the performers. But I think that it's risky territory to get too attached to an actor or anyone really, because they're, you don't know who those people are. You don't know if, as much as I can say that, you know one of those characters would not make fun of me, I don't know if the actor would, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think you have to be careful, and you have to mind yourself in that sense. But I also think you're just missing out on so much if you're just looking at it as, I mean, yeah, David and Gillian, they're so special, and they brought so much to this show that we love, and Mulder and Scully did, but also all of these other characters. And I think I would be as invested. I know some people don't want to see a reboot unless it's Mulder and Scully played by David and Gillian. I'm the opposite. I'm like, give me a reboot that is about someone else entirely, that's set in the same universe, or, follows some sort of similar vibe and aesthetic. But to me, it's not even just about those two characters. But I get everyone has their own reason for liking something, but I think you're missing out if you don't also sort of invest in all these other parts of it.
No, I agree completely. And I think this sort of, when, the fans that only focus on David and Jillian and only like, they're only watching the X-Files for, for these two actors. There's something bordering on like this celebrity worship that I just do not agree with. Like you said, they're, the real people. We don't know them. Uh, don't put so much of yourself and invest so much of your own sort of, heart and soul into a celebrity that you don't know. Um, and it's easier said than done, because, like, there are these actors that portray our favorite characters, but like you said, the X-Files is about so much more than that. And speaking of the reboot, as long as we're talking about it, um, I am with you as far as I want. I mean, if there's gonna be a reboot, I also want, completely different characters set in the same universe, maybe exploring similar conspiracies, similar mysteries, but give me new characters, give me
Yeah.
something new. Because like, every fan has their own opinion. I feel like Mulder and Scully's story has been told. Like, we don't need more. Like, their journey has ended. And just give me new characters that get to, that I maybe will even fall in love with. Um, that, you can't go home twice, but if you can create something that is also interesting and challenging, then, why not give it a shot?
And I love that we got seasons 10 and 11 because I think Mulder and Scully as characters, it's always interesting to revisit characters to see where they are now as older people in their lives. And I think to me that was really fascinating. And I think that there were times in 10 and 11, in my opinion, that they got it right and times that I didn't enjoy it as much. And that's fine. We agree on this. We will always have our old episodes. Nobody is
Exactly.
taking those from us.
Like, they're not gonna ruin my childhood by
No.
rebooting a TV show. Like, it's it's such a ridiculous concept that, nothing can ruin your childhood because your memory is always there.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think for me anyway, and I again had this conversation with when I interviewed Beth and Jones. For me, the X-Files is less about nostalgia and more about what you mentioned, actually. It's about the continued relevance. And I think I wish some of the themes were not as relevant today as they were back then, you know? But I think even as somebody who's interested in science and technology in the future, and the X-Files was a show that in many ways looked at the potential impacts, the negative impacts of a lot of these things in the future, and the role of power and politics in those in those negative impacts. And I think that we're seeing a lot of these things play out now. And I think there's still a place for a show that does that. And but I do. There is a certain amount of it that's nostalgia for me, but I don't think I'm engaging with it purely from a place of nostalgia. But yeah, I would love new characters. I'm excited for Ryan Coogler. I think I listened to the interview that everyone is now talking about where
I haven't
he
listened to
mentioned
it.
it's really good. So he talks about his process and how much he loves horror as a genre, and he even deconstructs the idea of genre in a really interesting way, and how it was a tool for racism, and just a really, really interesting person. His approach is really interesting. He works with a lot of consultants, he does a lot of research, and I just think I'm excited for somebody like that looking at the X Files. Like if he's doing it, I'm excited to see what he'll do with it. Yeah, and I mean I will take any X Files they give me, but I would very much like new stories, new people.
I mean, I agree
Um,
with you, and about the X-Files being topical, and probably, we don't want it to be as topical and relevant as it is. In the Recently, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I came to a conclusion that, to me, the X-Files is, it's about a lot of things, but it's primarily about uh, the dangers of technology falling into the wrong hands.
yeah,
And that is as relevant as it can get, which is why it makes me so upset when I see fans using generative AI, these machine learning algorithms, to make content, because they're doing exactly what the show was warning us against. Like, it doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT, or if it's you know gene therapy, whatever. Like, it's about technology being used for
yeah.
the wrong purposes by the bad faith actors. And so I think if this new show will do justice to these themes, the themes that we need more of in our culture, then I'm all for it. Um, we need a show like the X-Files. We need more. Don't want to say content. We need more fiction like the X-Files that challenges us and raises these questions.
And even if you think about, I mean, the X Files dealt with AI as far back as Ghost in the Machine, which
Yes.
and I think there are a lot of things in that episode that it's just interesting to see that perspective on technology that we're seeing have a much more daily impact in our lives. But I think the other part of the X-Files, which I always appreciated, was so many stories looked at ecological disasters and how the climate crisis or different like ecological issues impact communities, species, ecosystems. And I think that was actually quite a strong theme throughout the
It
X-Files.
was.
And I think that's where I feel there's a bit of a disconnect if you've engaged with the X-Files and the themes of the X-Files. I personally don't see how you can be as enthusiastic about generative AI as a lot of people are. And it's funny because for a year or so, well, actually for a few years, my job, I worked part-time within a research institute that was researching. It's an AI research institute. And my job as a science communicator was to facilitate the critique of those technologies by communities that are being impacted by it, which I loved, and it's interesting because a lot of the scientists are really open to that critique. It's the companies and the users I find are more enthusiastic, whereas a lot of the people developing or looking at those technologies in a research way are much more cautious and careful, and they want to get it right. Whereas the companies are like, let's make some money from this thing.
Companies just want to make money, and the public, people are so fast to just jump on the latest trend without even thinking. I've seen, like with this latest Studio Ghibli, this
Makes me
trend.
so
I
sad.
have seen so many smart uh, people capable of critical thinking, these like good faith actors, also making these derivatives, Studio Ghibli versions of themselves, and I was just so disappointed. Like some journalists and activists, like you're supposed to be the good one, the good guy, but I don't know if it's just the human nature, but we need to be so much more cautious.
Yeah. And you know what I think is great about our fandom is, and I'm sure this exists in a lot of fandoms where the focus of that fandom deals with technology and ethics, like Star Trek or whatever it is. But I see with a lot of X-Files fans that I know online making those exact points and critiquing AI. And I think especially because we have such a culture within fandom broadly of fan art and illustration and design and all of these things. And I think we value those things, and we value the people who do them and the work they put into it. So I think that I've probably seen more people within my fandom critique these things than be enthusiastic about them, which I find interesting, and which makes it a group of people I'm happy to be a part of.
It gives me hope. Um, for every account I see that posts like these derivatives, and I'm not even talking about these like uh, when they alter the scenes with the actors is just such so unethical. There's so many fans that really like they just eat it up because they want, because is it just because they don't engage with the X-Files beyond the MSR of it all, because they don't care about anything else that the show has to say? They just want to see Mulder and Scully kiss, and for them, that's the best. These AI videos are the best thing ever. But for every account like that, I have seen a lot of, like you said, critique coming from people who are really upset about uh, you know the fan like the fan artists within our community who are being exploited. And that's I feel like we need to stand up for each other and for the fan creators within our fandom.
And we see it in podcasting where there are tools that you can use now to do a first edit of a podcast. There are tools, but if you think about it, they're just going to edit it in the same way that every other podcast before it has done. So you're just going to get this replication of work.
Right.
There's going to be no creativity, no novelty. And one thing, an aspect of television and film production that I hadn't considered as being under threat by AI was voice acting, because I interviewed Angelo Vacco, who I think a lot of us, I think he's quite a special person to so many fans because he worked on the show for so many years in production. He was an actor in, I think, 4 episodes, maybe more. And he actually did voice work in seasons 10 and 11. But some of the voice work that he does as an actor, and that he and his colleagues do as part of what's called a loop group. That's a difficult thing to say with my accent. I had to really try. But with a loop group, where they say there's a scene where there are background extras in a diner or whatever, and they're on set, they were quietly mouthing to each other so it looked like they were talking, but then that audio has to be put in post-production, so you have these actors saying things into the microphone that it looks like those characters could be saying, and that would be sort of normal for them to say. But now there are generative AI processes doing that, and it's like, that's a craft, and that's, a person will bring something to that a machine could never. And I just think it's incredibly sad if we support companies by using their products that are really out to replace these people that we as fans love and respect. And I think that, for me, that's where my thoughts lie, and also the environmental damage of it.
Absolutely. Well, like we said, these companies, their only goal is to make money, and if they will cut corners and save on everything that they can save on, and if that means putting people out of work and replacing people that you have to pay, and you have to, not only do you have to pay their salaries, but you also have to listen to their demands and deal with people. Who wants to deal with people?
They're the
People are so
worst.
complicated, and people are the
People are the
worst. They
worst.
always want more, and they want livable wages and
And rights.
bearable working conditions. Oh, nightmare. But I just have an algorithm to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think I suppose if those of us who were there with the original series as children, teenagers, young adults, and if we're still fans, then the show has impacted us in some way. It's impacted how we think about the world, what we're interested in, what we believe. And I just think that, hopefully, I don't know, even within our small little corner of the world, the internet, that we can be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
As
I
I
mean,
say that without, there was no hope in my voice as I said that. I was like resigned to the fact that, have we
there is
lost?
there is such a thing as uh cautious hope,
Yeah.
I guess, or hope, more of a, I don't know if it's hopeless hope, but uh I would say cautious hope, cautious optimism.
And it's a cliche, but like, I don't want AI replacing the creative work in my life or the creative tasks. Like, those are the few things that still give me joy, you know? Like, that's not what I want. Um,
I mean, for companies, everything is money, so they don't see creativity as, for what it is. Creativity is a human endeavor. It's about expression. It's about authenticity. It's about just doing something. Um, Sometimes even without any purpose, like of making money or being seen. It's just something that you do for yourself. It comes from within. But for them, for these companies, everything is about the dollar. So they
yeah.
just don't see creativity, like I said, for what it is, for what we see it for.
And I do, like, I suppose if I'm being cautiously optimistic, I see, when you see AI generated imagery, to me it looks a bit cheap. It doesn't look, and I think that even if that's because it's still developing and it will improve, I still think we'll associate that sort of cheapness and that lack of soul or energy or creativity with AI generated content. So I think that hopefully it's creating a society that will actually not really want it and like it. Like, I think we saw that a little bit with the first Fantastic Four trailer and
Mm.
posters, the backlash to those. Um, and I think that that sort of gave me a little bit of hope. And I do think that there are going to be things in life that this technology will be very useful for, and in public health, and then there'll be loads of reasons to use it. But I think the creative industries are not that place.
It really isn't. And I mean, I agree with you. For me, it's if I see a company, any company, be it like an online store, a gym, like any company using uh, generative AI instead of, paying models and actors to pose for their promotional pictures, I'm not going to use their product. It means that they were too cheap to actually hire someone. That they don't care about their product. They don't care about the quality. And if that's how they treat their promotion, is something that, you can let AI spit it out. Why should I, if they didn't invest the energy and the money into presenting the product to me, why should I invest my own money and energy into consuming their product?
And that's who I'm going to be angry at, the companies. Like the first time I hear about a film or a TV series using AI for the background voice actors, or the voice acting, the background acting, that's when I'm going to be angry. And if, yeah, if the X-Files I don't think the X-Files reboot would do that, but I think
Oh, I don't
that
know. I
would,
mean, I I uh I like Ryan Coogler. I
me too.
think that he will do a good job. However, it will still be a Disney production. So I am just, the way that, what we heard about them using AI in like WandaVision or their Marvel products. Uh, so it gives me very little hope because it is a Disney product first and foremost. So I don't know. I want to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I think if it's somebody like Ryan Coogler, who I haven't seen Sinners yet, I cannot wait to see it though, because I've just heard so many great things about it. But I think somebody is coming in with as much power as he has, hopefully will steer the ship in the right way. Um, yeah. But I'm excited. But like this is why I love, this was one of the things with the podcast that I really wanted to use it as an opportunity to explore all of these other aspects of, again, that transmedia story of the X-Files, like the audio dramas, the comic books, the novels, like I think that the stories sometimes that are told in those, for me, are just as interesting in many ways as those that are told in the episodes. Um, and the video games, we both love the first video game,
Yeah, yeah.
don't we?
Oh, we
You
do.
love,
I mean,
yeah.
I still haven't finished it. It's hard. It's hard, y'all. It's a very difficult game, but it's so much fun.
I'm struggling with resist or serve now.
Ah, you're
I'm
there. Oh,
really
I want
struggling.
to get to that game because Krychek is in it. And
I
I'm
haven't got
like,
to cry check yet. Yeah,
Krychek is in it.
yeah. I mean, I do love. Who was in? So the first one. Have you ever finished the first one, or is this
No,
your first?
I
Okay,
know the
good.
lone gunmen are there, but I haven't gotten to them yet.
I love those guys. I rewatched Jump the Shark
Mhm.
recently.
Oh,
I am not as mad about that. I like that episode because I really like. I loved the spin-off series. I loved Eve and Jimmy. They were the other two characters, weren't they? And of course, from Dreamland,
Morris.
Morris Fletcher.
Yeah.
So I loved all of those people together in an X-Files episode. But there was a moment at the end, and I can't remember the exact line, but Scully, they're at the burial for the Lone Gunmen, and Scully said something like, I hope they knew how much they meant to me, or they meant so much to me. And I was like, am I crying at Jump the Shark? Is this episode making me cry? And the answer was yes. Um, I love
I
them.
mean, I am not mad about the way, that ending. They got the hero's ending. What I am mad about is that Mulder didn't get to say goodbye to them.
Yes. That I noticed that yeah, I agree. But he sort of in a little way got that with Langley in this, which is an episode I really enjoyed in season
I
11.
Yeah, I really like that one.
I mean, we're sort of unusual in that I think we both enjoy season 11, don't we?
I Season 11 is one of my, I don't know, like top five seasons.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I like season 10 too. For me, the biggest problem with season 10 for me is that it's too short. I
Yeah.
think if they had more episodes, more, good episodes, it could have balanced out some of the weaker ones. It was just like it started and then it ended and that's it.
Yeah.
Season 11 was it was perfect that way because like 10 episodes, 10 solid episodes, that's good.
And I rewatch a lot of them. Like I
Mhm,
rewatch
me too.
this a lot because I love it as an action story. The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat is in my sort of top five all-time
Same,
episodes.
same.
I love Darren Morgan. I sort of, and I was chatting with some friends about this, and possibly I think I was chatting with you about this before, that I think of as sort of a Darren Morgan trilogy for me is Clyde Bruckman, Jose Chung, and Forehead Sweat. And I love to watch those three because they're so thematically linked. And I also think they share this sort of surreal humor that I really enjoy. And I just think they work so well as a little mini box set.
This surreal exploration of the human condition, it's such a Darren Morgan thing.
Yeah, like how does he do? But I love that it's a universe that you can explore things like the nature of truth, the nature of reality, the nature of all of these things. And also you can have episodes with like evil cats. Like it's the best show ever.
It is the best show ever. And if like if I'm gonna use this very Zoom term, like circle back to the reboot, and I was just you were talking about like this, media, X-Files media outside of the show, like books and TV, video games, audio dramas, and I was thinking that this reboot is just another installment in this gigantic universe. So like you don't have to be mad about it. You don't have to like sort of put all of your hopes that all of the things that you didn't like about, the finale or the original series, like you really hope that this show will get it right. You don't have to do all of that because that show stands on its own. And then we have so many books and comic books and Audible originals and spin-offs like Millennium and The Lone Gunmen. And so this show will just be another installment within that universe, and it doesn't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be crushed under the weight of our expectations.
There are so many things in this world to be angry about, and I think that this is not one. But that's a nice way to frame it. I think that all of these things sort of are just different ways to explore the universe that originally was set up by Chris Carter. Like,
Right.
the power of that, like to be Chris Carter and have come up with this idea that all of these years later, put 30 something years later, people are still trying to find ways to explore. And
Mhm.
of course, we live in a world of capitalism. People are trying to make money from it. But I think that there are probably easier ways to make money than from the X Files. I do think that, it's about telling stories. That's what I feel from, and especially from having had the privilege to speak with people who worked on the more recent seasons. Like it really does feel like it was people getting together to make good television and to tell interesting stories, and everyone seemed to have a great time, which was nice.
I agree with you. And also, that's one of the things that I think the X-Files revival makes the X-Files revival, the last two seasons, different than all the other revivals and reboots because most of them are just a way to make more money. But the X-Files famously was not that. The reason that we didn't get a third movie and the fans were campaigning for a third movie or any kind of continuation for years was because the second movie didn't make enough money, and so Fox didn't want to take another risk. And so the revival was, it was a result of the fans campaigning and complaining and, being loud and annoying for years and years. So uh, I think that's, it wasn't an exercise in, greed. It was an exercise in creativity and wanting to tell more stories.
I would be up for if the reboot was actually it was a movie. If Ryan Coogler made a movie set in the X-Files universe, I think that would be pretty cool.
That would
Because
be
I don't know if it's been confirmed that it's a series, and maybe this is the other thing. I don't think it's been. I mean, Disney haven't, to my knowledge, confirmed anything yet, but so it could just be that they're exploring it and it might not go anywhere. But I hope it does. I would like to see it go into a movie. I'll take whatever they make, but
as long as Disney recognizes the power of the fandom, how much we want it to be good so that they don't interfere with the creative process. Uh, just stay away, hold their AI and let people do the creating.
yeah,
Uh, I'll be happy. And what you said about fan, I mean, the X-Files being so vast and fans and people trying to, finding new ways to explore that universe. I'm thinking about fan fiction, thinking
yeah,
about hundreds and thousands of works in fan fiction, regardless of whether it's Shipper or Romo, no Romo, or if it's, Mulder Krychek or Scully Reyes or what have you. It's just, and we're not making any money off of it. It's
yeah.
just, decades and decades, fans just writing for free for our own gratification. Um,
I love, and this is something that I want to take some time this year to read classic fanfic because it's not something I didn't read it at the time. I remember what was it, the Red Speedo Diaries, wasn't that?
yeah.
That was like a I think that was a website or a zine or something at the time. I
Mhm.
remember some of the zines, but I don't remember reading much fanfic. I tried to write fanfic and I was really bad at it.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. What genre, what
it
pairing? Give me
it's
any.
on a floppy disk, and it was I was young, but it was sort of a Buffy X-Files crossover.
I love
So
that.
so I wrote this opening scene. I think it was set in like a hospital lab. Like obviously that is my favorite. Those are my favorite X-Files was always what if science goes wrong? What if
Mhm.
science does too much? So I loved when something was set there. And I think I wrote this teaser sequence where there's this really elaborate sort of Buffy style fight, and there's this sort of character who is sort of the Slayer, and instead of a stick, she takes out a stiletto. And it was like, so we have this like Slayer type character for the alien colonists, and it was
I
very
love
much
that.
the writings of a young teenager.
Uh, well, I think, based on what you told me about your background in science and science communication, and I think that you could write a book, set in the X-Files universe that explores all of these themes, because like you have the knowledge, you have the expertise, the experience in that field. So I think you can totally write a book set in
I'd
that
love.
universe.
I mean, we have amazing people like Anne Simon and who have written, books about the science of the X-Files. But
Mm.
even in an interview I recorded recently with somebody who worked on seasons 1 to 5 of the show, we talked about the accuracy of the science in the X-Files. Like there was such attention to detail with everything from in science it's sort of there are all of these running jokes like people using pipettes the wrong way or without the little tips or using it like in a show where they're using it to inject like and I think the X-Files like there was one episode in I think it was Redux I think it was Redux, where Scully does a southern blot to test
Mhm.
her. She's running, I think, her sample against the alien sample or something like that. She does a perfect southern blot. Like all of that technique is perfect. And I remember, like when I was doing my PhD, when I bought was starting to buy the box sets on DVD, I like insisted my the people in my lab watched this scene with me because I was like, this is a perfect southern blot. So I think that, and I don't know, I really appreciate that a show that was about exploring the paranormal, the supernatural, embedded themselves with such care into like real science, probably think real politics, real psychology, all of those things that I don't know as well. But seeing science, the representation of science, I think was very interesting. And also the Scully effect, amazing. I'm like, we need to understand the Pendrell effect. That's my that's what I want to know. Or all of the like, all of those forensic scientists that they brought in for handwriting analysis or photographing. I'm just, yeah, maybe that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. That's another book. I mean, when I went to Montreal Comic Con in 2018, oh my God, it was such a long time ago. Uh, and so, we met David and Mitch Pileggi and William B. Davis. And then we also had like these panels. And then someone within that, that group was talking about the Mulder effect. Like we have the Scully effect, but that I think it was a woman, and she said we cannot diminish the role of like the Mulder has, because she said that I'm also like studying something like science related or something like psychology, and Mulder, like she said, Mulder had this effect on me. So there should be something called the Mulder effect.
Yeah.
People going into like, I don't know, psychology or law enforcement, or just, dedicating their lives to something important thanks to Mulder.
And I think that's it. I think it's that commitment to a cause, a commitment to, this greater thing, this thing that's really important, that's almost beyond knowing, almost beyond comprehension. I think that commitment is could be an interesting place. What was it like for you meeting? I've never met in person anyone from the show. I don't think I would be able to speak. I think I would probably, if I met David, I think I'd probably cry. I genuinely, I think I probably would. How was that for you?
Oh, so the first time I met him in Montreal, I was with my friend Kim. She's also a big X-Files fan, big David Duchovny. She actually met him many times. So it was very comforting for me having, her by my side. And so we were in this long line to get his autograph. And she was before, in the line before me. And so she had this photo for him to sign. And as he takes this photo, and then he he looks at me, like his eyes meet mine, and I have a heart attack because, and I am saying this in the nicest, not creepiest way possible. He has electric eyes. It's like the man is just like, it's just like Jillian said, he oozes sex appeal. He just has this like look, magnetic, electric, I don't know, just looks at me. It's not, and it's like very, kind and acknowledging. Uh, and it was just like for a split second, but that's it. I was done.
Yeah,
And then
I
and then later we were in line to take, picture with him, and I think he recognized me, and he was like, he was just so nice, just, oh hi, it's you, and puts his arm around me, and I'm like, and I'm very sweaty. It's like, oh my God, I was so self-conscious about like, you don't touch my like sweaty t-shirt. uh but he was on the one hand, it's like, I'm gonna die because it's David Duchovny and he has electric eyes, and on the other hand, he has such a disarming aura. And it was like that when I met him again in London. But it was a little different because I had some presents for him. And I
That's so nice.
I had some presents for him. And so, okay, I actually talk about this in another podcast episode, but we're supposed to take the picture. And I think that we're gonna take, we're gonna go to the table where I'm gonna give him the presents. And so I shake his hand, and he's still holding my hand, and I'm going for the little table, but we're gonna take the picture first. He yanks me back to to where the camera where the picture is we're gonna take our picture, just like yanks me, drags me there. And that's how we ended up frozen, like this, like, I'm holding his hand, the little like decorative pillow I have made for him, like front and center. And that's just how we took the picture. That's not how I wanted to take the picture, but that's how it happened.
I do like someday I hope I'll make it to a convention or something where there are photos. I think it will be me just like in fear. I don't know what would happen to me. I love seeing the photos from like File Fest or X Fest where like I think it was File Fest that had one with Covarubius X and Deep Throat.
Right.
And I was like, I would lose my mind. I would cry. I would shake. I would not be okay if I met those because I mean, come on, they're so cool.
The
One time, the X-Files fan retrospective had an online event with William B. Davis, and we got to ask him questions. And it was like, for me, that was so special because he was just so kind and nice, and like he's not scary.
No, he's
He's
not.
terrifying on the show, but he's like the kindest
Sweet old
person.
man.
Yeah, and so intelligent and so just yeah, that
Soft
was nice.
spoken. That's what I loved about FileFest, and that's why it breaks my heart that I can go
Yeah,
again. Is meeting all of those people. And like I said, I don't care about celebrity. I really don't. But all the people that at FileFest, like, from the writers to the actors, none of them acted like celebrities.
yeah,
They were just so down to earth. And so, they just treated you like a person. They were just people who happened
yeah.
to work on my favorite show. And it was such a,
And they help bring these characters to life, and like yeah, it's I think that's where I am on David and Gillian as well. I love and respect them the same way I love and respect Laurie Holden and Dean Hagland and all of these different people because they brought all of these characters to life. Yeah, in the same way that the writers did and the production crew did and the sound designers did, and yeah,
well, I'm gonna say that David, um, when he tours in UK a lot and in Ireland. So, next time he releases an album, be on the lookout because he might just stop, do some shows in
yeah.
Europe, in Ireland, and you can
His
meet him
books
there.
are good. The Reservoir is great. I really like that. The
Oh, I
novella.
love his books.
Yeah, he's really great.
I think I have most of them. I don't have Holy Cow,
Yeah, I think that was the first one I read. Yeah, I
right?
like that one.
Right. So we said an hour, and we've been talking for an hour and 25 minutes, something like that.
We lost 9 minutes.
We did lose 9 minutes. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for first of all for agreeing to do this interview. I've been wanting to invite you on the show for a long time because I really like your podcast, and I think that you're doing very important work within the fandom, but also because you're my friend. And I love the conversation we ended up having. Just touched on so many interesting topics.
Well, it
So
was an
thank
honor
thank
and
you for
thank
that.
you. And
Thank
I hope
you.
you'll do the same for me sometime and be on my
I
show.
would love to come on your show. I have no idea. I've
It's so
never been a
weird saying my
guest on a
show.
podcast before, so
What?
I
Me
don't know.
neither, actually. Well, not in an X-Files one. I've done
Okay.
science ones, but like, yeah,
I
that's
have
much more my comfort zone.
I have a little spot, just a tiny little in the X-Files retrospective documentary, just like
Oh,
tiny
nice.
little. I made it into the final
Oh,
cut.
great. I haven't seen that and I cannot wait. I think that Lauren and Carly are just doing such beautiful,
Absolutely.
important, like
Yeah.
historical, like historian, the work of historians, and I
Yeah.
just
And
really
this is like
appreciate it.
this is this is genuine work that they're putting in.
Oh,
So this
like,
is creativity, this is hard work,
yeah.
and this is just, because they love the show. So, those AI companies have nothing on
Oh
creative
no,
X-Files fans.
they could never.
Never. Okay, well, I'm gonna take more of your time. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good weekend, and I will see you on Instagram.
You definitely will.
Oh, also, I'm sorry. Before we go, do you have anything to plug? Any projects that you want to?
No, just
Okay.
the podcast you've done. So I appreciate it.
And I will post the link to the podcast in the description of this episode. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.